Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 6, 2021. My name is Karen Bowden-Schatz, and I serve as Associate Pastor at First Lutheran Church in Onalaska, Wisconsin, and this is my morning musing. So I continue to make my way through this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. I listen to it mostly when I'm on longer drives, so it's a slow go, but it's so rich. It takes time for things to kind of settle into my brain, and so I'm taking my time in reading this. The last listen was 2 chapters, one on behavior and one on color. So I'm going to talk a little bit about behavior and behavioral racism and behavioral anti-racism. So the first thing I wanted to say is that I feel like at this point in the book, Kendi is getting us into those racist things that are just insidious, and they sneak in, but they're so blatant, but they're just such a part of our lives that it challenges me a little bit more to rethink how I think and to re-examine some of those things that I've kind of I've been indoctrinated into. And so behavior is one of those. So I want to read the definitions for you, and then I'm going to read a couple quotes and comment on them. So a behavioral racist is one who is making individuals responsible for the perceived behavior of racial groups and making racial groups responsible for the behavior of individuals. We'll dig into that in just a second. Hold on. And the behavioral anti-racist is one who is making racial group behavior fictional and individual behavior real. One of the things that I always grew up with was the stereotypes of African Americans, of Asian Americans, of Mexican Americans. Like, this is how this group behaves. That is racist thinking. See what I mean? When it's like just in the water that we're drinking, it's like just in everything. Instead of having behavior be like for the individual, that person is behaving in this way. And that person doesn't necessarily represent their whole race or their whole gender or their whole political party. We'll get into that. We're going to stick with race for just a second. And so I wanted to read a few things that Kendi says. So he says, indeed, I was irresponsible in high school. It makes anti-racist sense to talk about the personal irresponsibility of individuals like me of all races. I screwed up. I could have studied harder, but some of my white friends could have studied harder too, and their failures and irresponsibility didn't somehow tarnish their whole race. What he describes is his irresponsibility for people of color. When they're irresponsible, it's not just their own irresponsibility, but they bear the burden of having to be responsible for the whole race. Because it is true that one person, we can take that interaction with one person and make it about the whole of the race, right? Black fathers are deadbeats. That's one of the things that I grew up with. They just don't take care of their kids, even though none of the Black fathers that I knew were that way. But then somehow they were the exception. Here's something else that Kendi says. One of racism's harms is the way it falls on the unexceptional Black person who is asked to be extraordinary just to survive. Or even worse, the Black screw-up who faces the abyss after one error, while the white screw-up is handed second chances and empathy. It's so true. And this is at the heart of systemic racism, that somehow built into the systems that we live in, my race affords me opportunities and chances that a Black person wouldn't necessarily have. And so as I was thinking about this, and the ways that we racialize behavior, especially of people of color, but also, friends, of women, of members of the LGBTQIA plus community, of Republicans or Democrats. Whenever we take a person's behavior as if it is a whole group's behavior, we're stepping into racism, sexism, homophobia. I don't know what to do with the whole political thing. But at the heart of that is that we dehumanize the whole of a race. And that is evil's best weapon, because we actually stop seeing each other. We no longer see our friend who's a Republican. We just know that they're one of those. And the same is true for the ways that we treat women, for the ways that we treat people of color. And we can't love our neighbor if we can't actually see our neighbor. So our task as white people is to face up to the ways that we kind of generalize individual behavior as a whole race behavior, and to say that's not true. We're each responsible for our own selves. And so their behavior is their behavior. Their behavior isn't every other Black person's behavior. And to be conscious of the little tiny ways that that kind of seeps into our language, whether it's a Black person, an Asian person, a Mexican person, a female person, a gay or straight person, or a gay person, or someone of a different political party. We begin to open our eyes and actually see the people that are in front of us for who they are individually. So that's where my brain has been the last few weeks when it's not been busy with Holy Week and Easter stuff. I hope it gives you something to think about. It was so good to see some of you Sunday and Easter. And until I see you again, be well, be kind, for Christ is with us.